It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. The Chancellor insists households will soon feel better off as she confirms cuts to government spending and civil service jobs.
Yeah, I'm confident that we will see living standards increase during the course of this Parliament.
Protests in Turkey as the president jails his main political rival on corruption charges. Pope Francis greets the faithful but struggles to breathe as he's discharged from hospital. Souring relations between the United States and South Africa, with Donald Trump offering asylum to white farmers. Plus, the families struggling to find a place to live as 3/4 of English councils say they'll charge 100% tax on second homes. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. The Chancellor has rejected predictions that living standards will fall by the end of the decade, and days out from her spring statement, has defended her stewardship of the economy. Rachel Reeves said she would stick to her self-imposed fiscal rules and not raise further taxes or increase borrowing. She confirmed cuts to government departments and civil service jobs to help her stick to her spending limits, while firmly dismissing new analysis suggesting most households would soon be worse off. Sky's political correspondent Rob Powell has more.
Setting up for a Sunday street kitchen in York, serving hot food to those in need. But many people here are working and still being pushed to the edge by rising prices. The Chancellor says that will change in the coming years.
The Office of Budget Responsibility forecast in October that living standards would increase at double the rate in this Parliament as they did in the last Parliament. They'll set out their updated numbers this week. But if you look at wages at the moment, wages are rising today at twice the rate of inflation. That is very different from what we saw under the previous government.
But just to be clear, you're saying that you simply don't think that living standards are going to fall. In fact, you're suggesting that they're rising now and they'll continue to rise. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm confident that we will see living standards increase during the course of this Parliament.
Others are not so sure. Research by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation found by the end of the decade, an average household would be £1,400 worse off than today. That's driven by average earnings falling by £700 per year, the average renter paying £300 more in rent, and the average mortgage holder paying around £1,400 more in interest. While the Chancellor says she rejects the data, it rings true in York.
When we started 7 years ago, it was predominantly the homeless population that we were helping. And in the last 3 years, that has significantly changed. So over half of the people that come to us aren't homeless. All demographics. We have the elderly, we have people with children, people in jobs, people in, in professions, and they're struggling as well.
So how can the government brighten the scene? This week's spring statement won't bring more tax rises, but it still won't be a pretty picture. Wednesday will likely bring a downgraded forecast for the economy, and that means a drop in the tax take and a hole for the Chancellor to fill. Around £10 billion of spending cuts are expected, with half of that coming from changes to welfare and benefits. But there'll be cuts here too. Government departments told to reduce back office costs by 15%, with 10,000 civil service jobs lost.
You can pretend you can deliver this through back office functions in HR and comms. You can't. Cuts of this scale require you to make some tough political choices. And that's what government's got to do. What's the shape of public services they want? What are they prepared to pay for? And to be honest with the public about that.
The Tories unhappy too, and questioning whether economic growth will tick up.
They've slapped huge amounts of taxes on businesses. They've borrowed vast amounts of money across the forecast period. That has pushed inflation up higher than it would otherwise be. That has meant interest rates being higher for longer.
With money tight, the Chancellor's decisions will be highly visible across the government and country in the months ahead. Rachel Reeves hoping that in the long term she'll have a happier story to tell.
And Rob is at the Chancellor's residence at number 11 Downing Street tonight. So, Rob, a difficult task for the Chancellor on Wednesday. What story is she going to try to tell?
The story that Rachel Reeves will try to tell on Wednesday, Barbara, is about a world that has changed and a government that is adapting and changing with it. I think this will be a statement that is more substantial that Rachel Reeves had probably hoped to give, but still not anywhere near as significant as the budget last year. And part of the reason for that story is to explain the increase in defence spending, but it's also to try and explain the gloomy growth news that we will get and the corresponding savings that will be announced with it. Essentially, the Chancellor will suggest that this is an economic malaise affecting many countries, and she may not say it explicitly, but it's one being made worse by the looming tariffs from Donald Trump. The solution Rachel Reeves will set out will be to go faster on her plans that have already been laid out, faster on planning reform, faster on investment in infrastructure to try and inject some buzz into the economy. I think the political argument we will hear, and we're hearing already, is about how much blame Labour can shoulder or should shoulder for the situation they are in, with the Conservatives saying that this is more about the gloomy tone they struck towards the economy when they entered office and the tax rises that are coming through on businesses in 2 weeks' time. There may also be some tension among Labour MPs as they listen to all of these savings and cuts and start to wonder whether this sounds a little bit like an austerity agenda. But I think the bigger tension is that one over living standards in the long run. The bet from the Labour government is that voters may, if not forget, then maybe forgive the pain of now if they feel better come the next general election. But that's still a big if, and I don't think there's going to be a lot that we're going to hear this week that will make many people feel too much more relaxed about the road ahead.
Rob Powell outside 11 Downing Street. Rob, thank you. A dark stain on democracy. That's how a leading opposition figure described his arrest on corruption charges today. Ekrem İmamoğlu is a leading figure in the opposition Republican People's Party and has emerged as the main challenger to Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He became mayor of Istanbul in 2019 and won a second term last year. His detention this week sparked widespread protests, with hundreds being detained. It's a major crackdown ordered by a leader who's been in power for now more than 20 years. Our special correspondent Alex Crawford saw those protests in Istanbul.
I don't know whether you can see, but there are banks of police over there. They've been firing pepper spray while some of the protesters have been throwing bottles at them. They're trying to disperse the crowd using this pepper spray, but tens of thousands have come out onto the streets of Istanbul and in a number of other cities across Turkey to protest about what's been happening and the arrest of the Istanbul mayor. You can see a lot of smoke over there. The lira has dropped dramatically over the past few days to its lowest for many, many years. The country's already going through some sort of an economic crisis with inflation extremely high. There's a lot of people out of work and a lot of students saying they fear for their future. A lot of people telling us that they fear this is a real attack on democracy and they fear for the future of the country. They're calling for Ekrem İmamoğlu, the Istanbul mayor, to be released, and a lot of banners around here saying we are clean in response to the corruption allegations and saying that democracy has really taken a dive in this country. A lot of people are very angry, but so far relatively peaceful.
Alex Crawford reporting there from Istanbul. Now, Pope Francis is recuperating at the Vatican tonight after being treated in hospital with double pneumonia for several weeks. The pontiff made a public appearance from a hospital window to cheering crowds below, but he looked visibly frail and struggled to breathe. Lisa Holland reports.
Thousands gathered outside Rome's Gemelli Hospital, clamouring to catch a glimpse of Pope Francis. Pilgrims and patients joining medical staff. Then, after 5 long weeks behind closed doors fighting for his life, the Pope emerged on a 5th-floor balcony in a wheelchair. Frail but alert, even giving a thumbs up to the faithful he hates being parted from. After intense oxygen therapy, his voice weakened. He blessed well-wishers and picked out a woman in the crowd, thanking her for bringing flowers.
Grazie a tutti e vedo questa signora con I fiori gialli. Che brava.
But as the Pope was about to be wheeled back inside after just a few minutes on the balcony, you can see he's starting to struggle to breathe, his lungs scarred from his battle with pneumonia. But for the crowd, just seeing the Pope was magical, especially for the lady who brought the flowers.
I waved the roses to get his attention. I chose yellow flowers because they give light and I'm fond of them. I always thought, he'll make it, he'll make it. There was something inside me that said he'll be back among us soon.
There had been much speculation about how the Pope would make the journey from the hospital back to the Vatican. It's thought he refused a medical helicopter, instead preferring the front passenger seat of a papal Fiat so he could be closer to the people. At the Pope's insistence, there was an unexpected detour to one of his favourite places, the papal basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, where the yellow flowers were laid. Then, another unscheduled stop to speak to a dog walker. This is a Pope who has clearly missed interacting with his followers.
This is the greatest grace we received today, to have Pope back with us among us. All of us were missing him.
I think I was a little worried, you know? We never know what can happen when the Pope gets sick. He is a little older.
But barely visible behind the car windows, the Pope was still reliant on a supply of oxygen. He remains a fragile 88-year-old whose papacy has changed.
He will continue to govern the church, from his room. He will be able to, to have private meetings, not big meetings, but private meetings. He'll be able to sign papers. The work of the church, in other words, goes on. And one might say the most important work that he does as Pope, which is the spiritual one, praying for us, with us, he will absolutely be able to continue.
The Pope has been told he needs 2 months of quiet convalescence at the Vatican. It remains to be seen whether he will follow doctors' orders to rest. Lisa Holland, Sky News.
The number of people killed in Gaza since October 7th has passed 50,000. That's according to the Hamas-run health ministry. The landmark figure, which includes fighters and civilians, comes as an Israeli airstrike targeted senior Hamas officials. 5 people were reportedly killed and several others wounded in an attack on Nasser Hospital in the south of the Strip. The Israeli military has also ordered people to evacuate from Rafah on the border with Egypt, warning it will soon operate against militants in the area. Donald Trump's increasingly aggressive stance towards Canada has been described by its prime minister as one of the most significant threats his country faces. And it's shaking up politics there, too. Today, Mark Carney called a snap election to take place on April 28th.
We are facing the most significant crisis of our lifetimes because of President Trump's unjustified trade actions and his threats to our sovereignty. Our response must be to build a strong economy and a more secure Canada. President Trump claims that Canada isn't a real country. He wants to break us so America can own us. We will not let that happen.
Well, it's not just Canada. Diplomatic relations between the U.S. and South Africa are also at an all-time low. Today, the country's expelled ambassador to the U.S., who has been accused of being anti-American, was welcomed home to Cape Town by crowds of supporters. Ibrahim Rasool described his expulsion as a badge of honor. Donald Trump has withdrawn funding to South Africa and accused the government there of unfairly targeting white landowners by taking private land, sometimes without compensation. Our Africa correspondent, Yusrael Bagir, reports.
South Africa's rolling citrus farms are readying for harvest and export to America. But a ripe economic relationship is turning bitter as tensions heighten between the two countries with every passing day. So this fruit may never land on US soil.
These citrus trees feed Americans and the South African economy through a lucrative trade agreement that's now at stake, with relations between the two countries souring. But while President Trump and Elon Musk extend their support and even asylum to white farmers here in South Africa, lucrative farm owners are concerned by what a deteriorating relationship could mean economically.
If we lose the US market, we're in deep trouble. So we estimate that 35,000 jobs is dependent on the AGOA agreement. In South Africa, it's got an unemployment rate of around 40%. 35,000 jobs is a lot.
Have you heard anything from the farmers in your association about taking up Trump's asylum offer at all? Is anyone
No,
interested?
I don't think anybody has taken it serious. You'll always have fringe in any society. You'll have 5 or 10% fringe that will take it up and will carry that flag. But the most people I deal with, most people speak, that love South Africa and would like to stay here.
But the reality in South Africa is that the legacy of apartheid still looms over a labor force of underprivileged coloured and black people, with more than half the land here owned by a white minority of only 7%.
I mean, is it quite common to have a white farm owner and then black farm workers?
Yes, it's quite common, yeah.
Vonnie's small farm is the typical setup for white farmers in South Africa's northern provinces, harvested by black labourers and vulnerable to crime, with owners that feel threatened by an expropriation act that empowers the government to seize land in the public's interest. A cause taken up by President Trump in his battle with the South African state, fueled by Elon Musk repeating debunked claims of a white genocide.
How does it feel, Vonnie, that the question of white South African farmers is now on the world stage?
In a sense, it's good. If it's done wrongly, it's going to be bad. So for us, we have been, I mean, we heard from our president, they say, why don't you talk to us? I mean, like, we're trying to, and they don't listen. We don't even get appointments. Now suddenly somebody else has it, so it opened up the conversation of our problems that we have. But we personally don't feel that it's at this stage really a genocide against us. I think President Trump knows about these things. He's not very happy about the expropriation law, etc., targeting things like that. But I don't think it's his biggest problem. I think his biggest problem is our government's friendliness with their enemies.
A country already marred by racial inequality, crime, and unemployment is under the microscope of Trump's Oval Office, with its aggressive intervention in South African affairs, digging divisions deeper into the ground. Yusra al-Bagher, Sky News, South Africa.
The mother of a 15-year-old boy who was shot dead 8 months ago has described how she looks over her shoulder every day that his killer is free. Renee Graham was murdered during a party in a park in West London last summer, but police say they have minimal leads despite several appeals. Our correspondent, Shaman Freeman-Powell, has been speaking to Renee's mother.
It's broken, it's shattered my life, to be honest. You know, everybody says what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's made me stronger in certain ways, but it's killing me. It is killing me on the inside.
Janae's son, Rene, was just 15 years old when he lost his life. He'd been at a pre-carnival party with friends. But just hours after this footage was filmed, the family fun day ended in tragedy. Renee Graham was gunned down. There were hundreds of people on this park the day Renee Graham was killed. Some would have seen the shooting, others would have seen the perpetrator getting away. But despite this and multiple police appeals, his killer still walks free. 8 months later, without answers, his mother's grief now compounded by anger.
I'm fuming about it. I'm fuming. Because right now, it seems like I'm not going to get justice for my son. Even when I go down to the road, I'm looking over my shoulder. I don't know who it could be. Do you understand? And that, it messes up your head. It really does. It plays with your head. because you think, is my family at risk? Who do they know? Do they know who I am? And that living, you can't live like that. You can't. They need to be found as soon as possible.
The Met Police say the investigation is ongoing, but explained it received a minimal response from the public after 4 separate appeals, and still urges anyone with any information to come forward. Janae, though, holds more than her son's killer accountable. For much of his life, Renee was in care, but his mum says was not properly looked after.
He had no structure in his life, no school, nothing, for 5 years. What does that leave a young boy to do? They weren't involved as much as they should have been. And down to all of that, he ended up where he was and ended up living the life he was living. They failed him. And they need to take responsibility for that.
Westminster City Council says, "We continue to express our deepest sympathy. We supported Renee over several years, and every decision made was driven by Renee's welfare and with his family's involvement." Looking back, Janae acknowledges that she has also made mistakes that she will now never get the opportunity to rectify. So she is using her pain and anger to seek answers, demand accountability and pursue justice for her son. Shaman Freeman-Powell, Sky News.
Let's get the latest sport now from Sky Sports News and Josh.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
It's no secret Wenger needs world-class defenders. Dozens of clubs are sure to be keeping an eye on Campbell's contract talks.
Arsenal always had to identify the talent. It was never my decision because he had to coach them, he had to motivate them, he had to train them, and I have actually executed his wishes. Once we knew that Sol Campbell could be available, then we had to go into overdrive because he was such a prized possession.
Arsenal's history, we were trying to win trophies, and by adding Sol Campbell to that defence, it meant that we were going to win more trophies, because he was that much of a good player.
If you want to be successful at club level, then you've got to keep your best players, and Sol Campbell, without a shadow of a doubt, is one of those.
Obviously, it's so important to the team. I mean, Sol's a great player. I'm sure if Sol was put up for sale, then every club in the world maybe would want Sol Campbell in their team.
He's a very private person. No one really knew what was going on in the background. There must have been huge amounts going on, a lot of speculation. Never about Arsenal, by the way, always about Inter Milan or Bayern Munich. And I think that would have been accepted from the Tottenham faithful.
So it's so long Sol, as one of the most drawn-out sagas of the season finally ends. The club feel Campbell's wage demands were excessive.
We're disappointed at what perhaps I would term the slightly unacceptable face of where football is going to at this moment in time. A contract demand of around £140,000 a week, frankly, is obscene. At the end of the day, the market will determine exactly what he's going to get. The club did its very best.
Did you demand this basic salary that Spurs have talked about of £130,000 to £140,000 a week to stay at the club? No. Some reports, wherever they came from, said that you even asked for a £7 million signing-on fee on top of that.
Not true.
And generally, how do you feel about the way the club's behaved?
Disappointed. Hurt. But Sol was a character that, remember, he was the lowest paid player in the England team. He was one of the lowest paid players in the Tottenham team. But his focus wasn't about money, because if it was, then you would just go, where's my contract? I want more money. And no one talks about the fact that he put that to the side and said, I will do something when I'm ready. And nobody should be forced into signing a contract or anything like that.
Pretty much understand that, if someone hasn't signed a contract, there's a good chance they'll leave. So first and foremost, if you're a player and you're left behind and he's gone, you want to see who else is coming in, see if we can replace him. He was almost irreplaceable, so. But it was and I understand it was very difficult for the fans to digest, and the club. But to actually lose a player of that quality and get nothing for him was a huge blow.
A lot of people have got opinions on my life. It's about time I've had opinion on my own life.
So now the negotiations can begin in earnest. Sol Campbell can name his price and pick his club pretty much anywhere in Europe. Tottenham's fans recognise that now, but there is one condition. Please don't make it Arsenal.
He knows and his agent knows where we stand on it. He has said he will make a decision by perhaps the first week in July, and we've got to wait for that. If it doesn't come by then, I guess we'll have to fry our fish elsewhere. But hopefully if he stays this side of the channel, it'll be Dover, Sol. Sol had a very good agent, Sky Andrew, who worked with him. And he was very helpful and very, very discreet. So we didn't know who we were up against. We had a guess that I think it was Real Madrid or AC Milan at the time, and Bayern Munich came in. And it all manifested itself in the press, that we realised we were under pressure. Most of our meetings were done after midnight, walking around my garden in Totteridge. And because he was paranoid, quite rightly, of getting busted by the paparazzi. And we had to make sure that it was very, very private and nobody would know about it. So it was at his decision to meet after midnight.
I think we had a walk in the garden, we had a walk on the road.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
From next month, hundreds of councils in England will begin charging a 100% council tax premium on second homes in the same way as it's done in Wales. But economists warn the policy will do little to solve the growing housing crisis, as Sky's West of England correspondent Dan Whitehead reports now from Cornwall.
The Jones family is constantly on the move. Mum Jenna is a chef, her husband runs a flooring business. But finding somewhere to call home in Cornwall has been a nightmare.
It has been the most horrendous struggle of our life. I applied for 23 properties over Cornwall. I didn't get the chance to view one of those 23 properties.
They pay nearly £2,000 a month in rent, but have had to move dozens of times due to landlords selling up.
It has consumed our family life, and everybody else that I work with locally, none of us are in a position where we can afford the going rents, and nobody that I know that I work with can afford to buy. So we're really stuck between a rock and a hard place, and we really need a solution.
It's hoped a new council tax premium for second homes could help. And it's not just Cornwall introducing it. Sky News data shows 75% of councils in England are bringing in the 100% charge, essentially double council tax for second homes. There are around 557,000 second homes in England alone, the majority either holiday homes or for long-term investment. Analysis shows the new premium could raise an additional £445 million in yearly revenue. The hope is the charge will free up housing stock, but there are fears about whether it'll work and potential loopholes.
For instance, if the property is put up for sale, provided as part of a job or undergoing major refurbishment, they might be exempt from paying the new tax. There's concern as well that even if it does prompt some owners to sell their second homes, it's unlikely that many of these properties will be affordable for first-time buyers anyway.
Those representing councils do not believe the charge is a silver bullet.
No one is overstating the power of this tool. It is a nudge in the right direction. It is one of a suite of tools that can be used. But in and of itself, it will not solve the housing crisis, but it is a step in the right direction if councils wish to use that to better manage their supply.
Building may well be the ultimate solution. The government is pushing ahead with plans for 1.5 million new homes. For those already struggling, few believe the new council tax will help.
It's not going to make a difference. For many of the owners of second homes, a double council tax is maybe just like dropping a £5 out their pocket. Go, girls. Ready? Go!
For families like Jenna's, owning one home, let alone a second, seems out of reach. Dan Whitehead, Sky News in North Cornwall.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by barrister and political commentator Rupert Myers and former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng. Welcome both. Among the stories we'll be discussing this on the front of the Times. Their headline, Chancellor risks war with unions over spending cuts. We'll be right back.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna. We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Omdurman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Sky News get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has rejected analysis suggesting most households would be worse off within 5 years and has said she's confident she can cut 10,000 civil service jobs to reduce spending. Tens of thousands of people have taken to the streets in Turkey in protest over the arrest of President Erdogan's main rival, Istanbul's mayor, despite demonstrations being banned. And Pope Francis has been discharged from hospital and appeared on a public balcony at Rome's Gemelli Hospital to bless the crowd. Hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with barrister and political commentator Rupert Myers and former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng. Welcome both.
Thank you.
Well, let's see what is on some of those front pages now. Well, on the front page of the Metro, the Prime Minister has issued an ultimatum for councils to show how many potholes they're fixing in a new crackdown. The education sector is facing its biggest squeeze in a generation ahead of the Chancellor's spring statement. That's according to the Eye. Rachel Reeves' plans are also on the front of the Mirror. She's set to cut 10,000 civil service jobs in her announcement this Wednesday. While the Times says the Chancellor's plans to cut tens of thousands of civil servants could lead to war with the trade unions. The fallout from Trump's tariff threats continues to cause havoc on Wall Street. That story leads the Financial Times. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer has been warned not to appease Donald Trump as he considers reducing a major tax on U.S. tech giants. That story's in The Guardian. The Mirror reports Christine Keeler's son says he will ask for a royal pardon to clear his mother's name more than 60 years after she was jailed for perjury. The chief executive of the National Grid has claimed Heathrow Airport had enough power to avoid shutting down during Friday, according to The Telegraph. And there's good news for sun lovers, with The Star reporting that Wednesday's predicted temperature could reach 20 degrees, making March the hottest since 1910. Maybe. We're joined tonight by Rupert Myers and Anita Boateng. Thank you both so much for being with us. Obviously, the spring statement in one way or another on many of the front pages. Let's start with the Times there. At the bottom, Chancellor risks a war with unions over spending cuts. Rupert, why don't you start us with that one?
Yeah, well, the weather might not be getting hotter for a few days, but for the Chancellor, it's already pretty hot. Ministers are drawing up plans to axe somewhere between, different newspapers have different estimates. The Times says maybe 50,000 jobs. Now, of course, the public sector has grown by some 25% over the last 25 years. Public sector productivity has not risen in line with private sector productivity, but the unions are extremely concerned and angry at the cuts and the impact that they may have. There's talk in the newspaper here of cutting school spending by £500 million and ending universal free meals for infants. So these are difficult choices. For people on the right, they may be wondering why it is that it's a Labour government that's been doing this rather than the Conservatives before them. For voters on the left, they may be wondering what was the purpose of this Labour government if they're going to come in and take such swinging cuts to the heart of public sector spending.
Anita?
Definitely. The fact that the unions are not going to take this lying down is something that we should continue to watch, because obviously this is the Public and Commercials Services Union, which is effectively the kind of public sector trade union. But this is a sign of dynamics to come. There is no doubt in my mind that when it comes to the pay deals that will be done between unions and between the government, the unions are going to be disappointed. The question is, do you end up in endless strikes? And if that happens, then the real promise that the public thought they were going to get off the back of the election then becomes seriously in doubt. Because not only do you have a government that is cutting welfare, potentially cutting back on public services, you also have the state not working. And that could be a really fatal cocktail for the Prime Minister.
And it seems like it's going to be felt across all sectors. If we look at the Eye, the front page there, the headline, education. They're saying education braces for worst squeeze in a generation, as Reeves, of course, admits cuts are coming. Rupert.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about 15% administrative cuts to all departments. The Eye thinks it's going to be 10,000 jobs, a fifth of the number that the Times does that are being axed. Obviously, this is shocking for people who voted for a government that was going to come in and they thought deliver for public services, to see them having to make huge cuts to the education budget. But, of course, this government is trying to do, as we understand it, the hard work at the beginning of its term in order to hopefully try and turn the corner by the end of it. But whether it can carry its support until then, if it's cutting these sorts of areas, education for any Labour voter is going to be an area where they think it's almost unthinkable to start making cuts.
Well, I'm a little cynical about this little piece. I think that this is clearly, when the Department for Education starts saying, having been in government, oh, well, you want us to find £500 million of savings, then let's pick the most attractive things that no government would ever want to do and go, well, that means we have to take food from children. So I think there's a little bit of a negotiation expectation management, and I think the government has been doing that all along. We had this week the announcement around welfare changes, and there was this briefing that actually they were going to freeze all payments of people on disabilities. That turned out not to be the case. I'm not surprised, having been a DWP special advisor. That is a very tough thing to do. So I think there's a little bit of that going on, a bit of ankle, a bit of negotiation going on to make sure that when it lands on Wednesday, people go, oh, that's not so bad.
So can I ask, do you think that this is the government rolling the pitch to make it easier to do less drastic things, or the Education Department kicking its toys out of the pram and threatening?
I think they both have reasons to be dramatic about what may be coming, which then ends up being not quite as dramatic.
Do you think the public will feel that, you know, so many things have happened? Of course, this government says they inherited a situation from the Conservatives, but then a lot of international factors have played a role as well. Do you think that that will make the public, I don't know, swallow the bitter pill a bit more easily?
I actually think there's a risk of the reverse. There's a risk that the government looks distracted by what's happening on the other side of the pond. I think it's definitely helped, for instance, Starmer's approval ratings, that he's been strong and visible in Europe. But British people, especially with the economy where it is now, you could end up in a sort of charity begins at home, where is the focus on what's happening in the UK, especially if decisions like this are resulting in public services not improving.
But I'm thinking also of issues like, you know, having to increase defence spending, Rupert.
Yeah, well, generally people vote on their own economic circumstances. I mean, they may accept if you stop them in the street and say, do we need to increase defence spending? They may say yes, but ultimately, come the next election, they're going to vote for a party that's going to make them and their families better off. And if their kids' school isn't getting the same funding, if local, government departments aren't helping them, then how many tanks we have on the battlefield is not going to be the thing they vote for in the ballot box.
OK. And then there's military war and then trade wars as well. If we go to the Telegraph front page there, Reeves ready to offer the US a £700 million tax break to avoid a trade war. Talk us through this one, please.
My heart goes out to Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, because effectively this is the Liberal Democrats' kind of argument. They've been arguing for an increase in the digital services tax, which is this tax that actually was agreed on the OECD across lots of different countries to increase its taxes on global giants. And the UK has been implementing it, and there is some signs that the US is certainly going to expect that to be rolled back. And so they have been pushing quite hard for the government to basically be clear about whether they're going to do anything about this tax. And Reeves was circumspect when she was out on media today, and it's kind of led to some of this expectation that she's actually going to roll over on this. I don't actually have any inside information about whether that's going to happen or not, but it's nevertheless quite significant that it's being seen as the UK potentially rolling over.
Rupert.
Well, we're being bullied. The criticism, the quote says here, from Washington is based on the view that the tax unfairly targets American businesses as they dominate the global tech sector. What else are we supposed to do? If we want to implement taxes in order to raise revenue, we need to do that. Look at the cuts we've just been discussing. We're having to kowtow to a government in America that is prepared to push its allies and neighbours around. The government is in a hard place, and they're not doing a terrible job of negotiating the fine balance between standing up for the UK's interests and not completely ditching relations with our biggest strategic partner.
Yeah. Of course, it's not just between countries, because if we look at the front page of the Financial Times, the headline there, Trump tariff tremors shatter Wall Street faith in American exceptionalism, because this is being felt across the globe, but obviously in the US itself as well.
Yeah. And there's a lot of speculation that actually a lot of the tariff tantrum, which is what I'm describing it as, not quite a tremor, is actually a lot of anxiety within the Trump camp about the economy. So the Fed has cut growth projections already. Inflation was expected to be at 2.5 by the end of the year. It's going to be 2.7. This is not looking good for the US economy. When you consider the size of their national debt, that's the reason why Doge is running rampant and throwing out, printers and everything in the quest to save money. So I actually think that this is quite a significant story that may well shape a lot of the conversations we were just having about, new taxes, conversations about tariffs, conversations about Ukraine. All of it comes down to that anxiety and that realisation that Joe Biden lost the election because of the economy. And if that continues to be a problem, the US continues to become more difficult and more unpredictable.
This story gives me some hope. The one thing that's going to rein Donald Trump's eccentric and very ambitious approach to government in is his own domestic markets and the people around him who are very worried about the fall of the dollar and the stock market. The quote here is about the tremendous amount of uncertainty caused by executive orders. If Wall Street can't get Donald Trump to pay attention, nobody can.
OK, but it does show, though, that we will always feel, when they say Europe, if the US sneezes, we catch a cold, it's going to, whatever happens in the US, we will always keep on feeling the repercussions.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that in some ways, a US is prepared to kind of use its weight and throw its weight around. It almost just serves to emphasize the amount that it matters, that the US matters. And even though, by the time of the next UK government election, it could be Donald Trump will presumably be out of power, the repercussions of the moving of political consensus in the US could be profound for a very long time to come. We can see, for instance, what happened with tariffs. Like, tariffs were a thing that were very much a Trump obsession. Biden kept a lot of those tariffs in place.
Anita, Rupert, stay with us. We'll look at more of the headlines, including Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, has called a snap election. Stay with us.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We start with breaking news.
I am Anna Botting.
It's been quite some day.
The golden age of America begins right now.
A long-awaited ceasefire is now underway.
First question, Sky News.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
Describe this feeling. It's incredible.
Now to California.
The Democratic mayor of Los Angeles cut the fire department budget.
Do you owe citizens an apology? Have you nothing to say today?
Jane Secker, Sky News. Would you like to respond to us now?
I've never seen anything like this.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
In principle, would you agree to do that?
Criticism of you, the president, is banned. How is this a fair election?
Historic day here today.
The cameras are poised here, there, everywhere, waiting to see what the president might do next.
I gave you the A+ treatment. Thank you. Thank you all.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky Security and Defence Editor. I've covered Russia's full-scale war since it began, witnessing the terror and the trauma.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
Getting the chance to tell people's stories, it's a privilege.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels.
I'm Dan Whitehead, Sky News' West of England and Wales correspondent. Sky News, get the full story first, free, wherever you get your news.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war.
This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's futures.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me now, Rupert Myers and Anita Boateng. OK, Rupert, let's start with this story in the Times.
Yes, back to the Times.
Front page. Let's just bring it up, I think, and go through the headline. Asylum seekers to remain in hotels for years, Treasury admits. I mean, obviously, the whole issue of housing asylum seekers in hotels and the length that many of them stay in for very controversial. What's this about?
Well, we were talking before about the cuts the government's going to have to make, and this story flies right in the face of that for anyone picking up a newspaper in the morning, because the Treasury believes that global instability means that it's inevitable that illegal migrants will continue to come to the UK, which the Treasury clearly accepting that Keir Starmer isn't going to be able to smash the gangs as he promised. The cost to taxpayers of each asylum seeker has increased from 17 to 41,000 a year between 2020 and 2024. There are 38,000 of them in hotels at a cost of £5.5 million a day, and the Treasury is admitting that they think that's going to be the case for years to come. So this is very, very difficult stuff, very difficult for voters to accept, very difficult to see an obvious solution to this problem. So while people's kids are having their school funding cut in the future, this is going to continue to be the case, and it's going to turn up their temperature on politics and possibly open up greater ground for parties like Reform to make some capital.
I mean, I think it's worth reiterating that Rupert point. £5.5 million every single day. Yeah. That is political kryptonite for this government. And actually, it's worth dwelling on exactly how this came about. This is Treasury brain. So Treasury has come up with this new Office for Value for Money, which was founded basically in September 2024 to make sure they could find new ways of saving money. And what they do is they tend to look at things that waste money and write reports about them, which then get reported on in the Times. And this is really revealing, not just because of the situation we find ourselves in right now, where the government's saying, oh, sorry, children, we can't fund your lunches, but we can fund £5.5 million every day to spend on asylum hotels. And also, it really flies in the face of Keir Starmer's specific pledge around the election, which is to end asylum hotels, which was always a sort of impossible pledge that really didn't mean anything because there was no plan to do so, except, by the way, we're going to spend some more money processing asylum seekers, as if the previous government hadn't thought of that. But this really speaks to the political problem that Labour faces and the reason why there's so much anxiety in Number 10, despite the size of the majority, which is that fundamentally they have a problem around delivery. And they know that if they can't get things like this under control, there is a real risk that the popular surge that has come across a lot of the Western world will come to the UK and will sweep out Labour. And this is a real vulnerability to theirs, and there's not much of a plan to tackle it.
OK. Let's move on to another story, front page of the Daily Telegraph. Trump and Putin at odds ahead of new Ukraine peace talks. Now, the Ukraine peace talks start on Monday in Saudi Arabia. Interestingly, of course, we know that Trump has always said he was going to solve it in a day. Maybe it hasn't quite taken a day, but he's certainly pushing ahead. But, Rupert, Vladimir Putin putting the brakes here a little bit.
Yeah, what are we on, day 65 or something of that one-day peace deal? We know that there was a temporary agreement in respect of infrastructure bombing. We know that Moscow broke that immediately. There are going to be talks in the future. Saudi Arabia, hopefully, they say, paving the way to a full-on ceasefire. But the Kremlin's playing down expectations because they've still got this entirely maximalist strategy. I don't think that Putin or the Kremlin have made a single concession in terms of what they want as the outcome of these negotiations. And I just don't see Trump getting anywhere. He came into this without a plan. He abandoned his cards by essentially giving away Ukraine's position right at the outset. And now he's just struggling on with Russia demanding that they retain parts of Ukraine and that Ukraine essentially becomes a state that can't join NATO and can't join the European Union. I don't see this going forward. I'm very pessimistic about it. And it's not the art of the deal. It's a complete catastrophe.
What have you made of Trump's handling of this, Anita?
Well, I think that in some ways the US doesn't have cards, because if Trump's ultimate objective is to stop spending money today on the Ukrainian war, and once that's your ultimate objective, and everyone knows that's your ultimate objective, there's almost nothing that can't be asked for in pursuit of that objective. And I think that Trump, whether the question of whether that's the right objective or not, even in trying to do that, the way that he has revealed all of his cards and said, would everyone like to have a gander? And look, your cards look better than mine, but let's still play. I think that has seriously damaged hope and confidence in the UK.
Okay, we've got 45 seconds left, so let's go to the FT, because Mark Carney has now set an election date. This is so interesting, isn't it, Rupert? Obviously, we all know who he is, because he was the former governor of the Bank of England. He's been really assertive, hasn't he?
He's been assertive. He's hit the ground running. He's got a great track record, working in this country, and he's got a great international presence. He looks like a grown-up in the room. It doesn't hurt that he just recorded a fantastically entertaining video with Mike Myers, no relation, which he put out on social media about Canada remaining Canada. He's clearly got a very slick campaign behind him. Yeah. He's optimistic that a short election will work to his benefit. And the election, April 28th, so he wants the country behind him.
Yeah, I think it's a smart decision to go for a snap election when he hasn't had the chance to make enemies yet.
OK. Rupert, Anita, we'll leave it there for now. I'll see you in the next hour. And now let's take a quick look at the weather.